Almost missed the landing zone. I hope you liked my little 23-page article on energy unification. If you didn't get it from a prior video, the link is in the description below, beneath every video. I keep getting asked the question about the best books on Pythagoreanism, and I'd like to show you one of them and mention the other one. But this video is about the secret of life and harmony of ancient Pythagoreanism, and I have every text ever written, except there might be some obscure texts somewhere in the Vatican written on fragments of the teachings of Pythagoras, and he got them from who knows before him. We don't know that, lacking a time machine, and you can't set foot in the same waters twice, so traveling back in time is not actually possible. Now this has a horrible title, but I just looked it up on Amazon. This used to be a really expensive book, but they reprinted it in paperback. It's like $21 on Amazon. So you have to ignore the title, which is absolutely abhorrent. It's called Touches of Sweet Harmony. Really, I don't know who decided to name the book that, but it's actually a lot of passages, a lot of references, a lot of really good informative stuff on Pythagoreanism. The other one is, I think, a hardback copy is available on Amazon. I also too looked like an hour or two ago to check on it. It's called Lore and Science in Ancient Pythagoreanism. Okay, Lore and Science in ancient Pythagoreanism. So I like to read a few passages. One of them is from the Oracles. The other one is about some of the lost secrets. Like the Timaeus and the Parmenides and a few other texts attributed to Plato are actually very ancient. It's of a much older form of Greek. Plato didn't write it. It's the Pythagoras' teachings actually come down to us attributed to Plato, but they're not original to him. I like to talk about spirit, matter, the third thing that makes it possible. I also, too, like to talk about DNA. I don't know if you know anything about galena. Galena is lead sulfide, okay? And it's quite magical, almost literally. Here's the molecule in composite. The lead is in gray, and the sulfur is in yellow. Anyway, it's lead sulfide. Lead, of course, depleted uranium. Sulfur, literally, I forget the ancient name for sulfur. It escapes me because I'm always thinking about 100 things at once. It'll come to me in a second. Anyway, this is, as a ham radio operator, I don't know if you're familiar with what a crystal radio is, but it has no battery in it. You could actually clip it to any wire. Farm boys would get old crystal radio. I have like 2 crystal radios somewhere in this house. They're buried somewhere, who knows where. Super simple device, essentially only 4 components. Now you do need a special earpiece to listen to it, but you could tune in. You'd actually pull in a rod, would actually pull in or out a ferrite along a copper tube, and inside of it is a crystal. And the crystal is that magic little component called galena, which is, like I said, lead sulfide. And lead sulfide has the magic properties of tuning radio frequencies. It's really fascinating. Just pull out a little bar and clip on the little alligator clip, depending on the type of crystal radio design. Clip it on a piece of like fence wire, metal wire outside, and you could listen. Remember, there's no battery in the thing, okay? None. You could listen to radio stations, and that was like the coolest thing ever. Back in the day, obviously nobody needs or messes with that stuff. But I mean, it's a simple device. It's a perfect analog of harmony and manifestation. I don't know if you know much about sympathetic resonance, and the radio analogy is nearly perfect. Of course, you can't take the radio analogy too far, but it's my analogy, and it's the most perfect analogy that exists, period, just flat out. And human beings are essentially a radio, not literally a radio, but of course there's no soul in the body, there's no signal inside of a radio. But there's a third thing, and I'd actually like to read from Chaldean Oracles and also too from Timaeus 31b through 32c on the third thing that makes 2 things possible. But there's also a fourth, but the fourth we could actually attribute to the body. But in the case of the crystal radio, and here's a simple crystal radio, we have a tuning coil, a detector, an antenna, And a ground, you don't actually necessarily have to have a ground, and a pair of headphones. And these are perfectly analogous. I'll actually put this up on Instagram and also too on my community page, where the signal, of course, is synonymous with the soul. The antenna is synonymous with the water. The DNA, or the galena crystal that makes up a crystal radio, is synonymous with the body. The DNA is exactly synonymous with the crystal and the crystal radio detector. And of course the life of the broadcast synonymous with the headphones, which is not actually the signal. People say, well, I'm tuned to 88.5 megahertz, I'm listening to the signal. No, you're listening in an interpretation that's been processed through the body of the signal. It's like you could tell two identical twins the exact same thing at the exact same time, but how one is tuned to themselves. And this used to be like considered New Age garbage, like your thoughts make your reality and the way you think makes your future. Like one twin could hear one thing and think something really good of it. The other one would hear it as sarcastic and take it as something bad. Individuation, even though they have identical DNA, even though they're identical twins, they still interpret the signal, which would be you talking to the, don't do this because of ABC, like a parent would. Interpret it in a completely different way. So this New Age idea that was considered, and I'm no fan of the New Age movement at all, really, but even a broken clock is right twice a day. This is an ancient principle of harmonics and sympathetic resonance, that the way we actually think and the way we ideate ourselves and our world actually determines our reality. Now, accidents happen, and you can't think positive thoughts and eliminate yourself from, say, somebody jumping you in the parking lot, for example. You could think good thoughts all day long, but there is a nature of life where things intercede in our lives. But this is, amazingly enough, extremely true. The ground, of course, people talk about grounding and electroculture. A true crystal radio for best signal reception requires grounding. I go barefoot basically everywhere that I'm not like out and about, and even then I'm wearing sandals. They do actually make grounding devices that go between your body, i.e. your feet, and the ground. And of course we had a one slide, in the case of a simplex crystal radio, one slide tuning coil, which is synonymous with consciousness. But anyway, I know you probably don't care anything about the crystal radio, but there's this magical component in it which is synonymous with the DNA, in that this lead sulfide crystal is able to tune all these frequencies. There's no battery in the unit, just a lead sulfide. Think of how crazy and insane everybody is now today, and we're running around and the world's going upside down. And listen, I know I'm out of shape, obviously I eat too much, but in speaking about what we consume, we should be consuming water. We're consuming soda and booze and Gatorade. Not me. Gatorade is banned in Europe because it has a bunch of cancer-causing components. I think the United States is one of the very few places you're able to sell that substance, and why it's banned in Europe. I don't know if you know that. Anyway, the water harmonic. The actual basis of the Pythagorean pentagram is the 108-36-36, i.e. 115, isosceles triangle. And also, too, without any coincidence, it's the basis of the water molecule. Oxygen here, 2 hydrogen. I say that actually memory and consciousness is in the water molecule, which of course makes up most of everybody. But it's obviously not, nor am I saying, nor have I ever said, is it within the oxygen or the hydrogen atoms themselves, rather in the geometric structure, i.e. the yugata or harmony. By the way, I've got yugata as an ancient Pythagorean secret saying. It'd take about an hour and a half to explain yugata. It's translated as harmony or harmonic union, but it means something a lot deeper than that. It actually refers to the logos, which makes life and the union between spirit and matter possible. If you take that exact same geometry over here, I could actually take it down about 100 more steps than this. Of perfect incommensurability, we have a top here, 1, 1, base of a phi. You take an incommensurable cut, you end up with 1 over phi, and then the base becomes phi naturally before actually subdividing it up, and each one of those subdivisions is synonymous with phi, 1 over phi, and equal to 1, because 1 is to phi as phi is to 1. And this means everything beautiful in nature is a harmonic, a sympathetic resonance with the 1. And this, by the way, is the ultimate meaning the ancient Pythagorean. You can find some really ancient coins that have a pentagram on the back, and around it will say Yugata. Yeah, these are the 5 points. So that just means harmony. It's like, you superficially, it does, but that's not what it means. It means the logos and the sympathy of the perfect union between two things that gives a third. And in the case of humanity, we're talking about consciousness and the DNA. The DNA, of course, what, i.e. the galena crystal, what sort of life would one tune to? You know, people actually tune outwardly. There's a lot of studies behind this. We tune outwardly that which we tune or identify with inwardly. And I listen to classical music most of my life. Yeah, it says something. And you never notice, like, well, if someone is dark inside, they'll actually tune into what they find themselves sympathetic with. This is why some of the most, even, and I've got nothing against death metal, right? You know, everybody listens to whatever they want to listen to. But people that are really dark and disturbed inside will find sympathy to that which they identify with, or they make their own reality thereof, because people have the ability to change their lives, but unfortunately most people choose not to, or they think, unfortunately, by nature of their ignorance, that they're powerless to change it, when in fact they do have it. They'll listen to death metal. You know, these people that are dark and moody, and, you know, everything sucks, and the glass is half empty, and we know those people out there, and we all kind of, most human beings, you know, do that in parts of their lives. And have you ever noticed, and if you think about it, you'll know it's true, that if you consume very, very unnatural foods and or liquids, that it will cause you a disharmony in your system. And you'll actually gravitate towards things that increase that or harmonize with the disharmony and the, you know, the bad feelings and whatnots within yourself, like listening to death metal, you know, partaking of substances of any one liquid or, you know, various varieties. I don't do that, by the way. Obviously, I eat too much and behind the computer too much, but I'm not actually consuming that stuff. Anyway, it's been proven now that the human self can tune in to the right frequencies that makes up our own reality. We are makers of our own destiny, but most people, unfortunately, feel powerless to do that. Anyway, spirit, matter, water being the antenna, and DNA being the crystal, because water is, it's a dipole antenna. It's necessary for life to occur. It's that third thing. I'd like to read a couple passages. One of this is Chaldean oracles. Get to that one second. And first, the fragments of Philolaus from Book 14. Actually, let's go into the Tamias, 31b through 32c. Now that which comes must be bodily, and so visible and tangible, and nothing can be visible without fire, or tangible without something solid, and nothing solid is without earth. Hence the divine. When we begin to put together the body of the universe, set about making it a fire and earth. But two things alone cannot be satisfactorily united without a third. This is the logos between matter and spirit. Water, the dipole antenna of life. For there must be some bond between them, drawing them together. And of all the bonds, the best is that which makes itself in the terms it connects a unity in the fullest sense. The only thing that has the fullest sense is that incommensurable geometry. And that's why that particular triangle and triplicate makes up the Pythagorean pentagram. It's the same geometry of life itself and of water. Water is necessary for life, last I recalled. And of its nature, continued geometrical proportionality. That is the only perfect geometrical proportionality in the entire universe, by the way. This is an ancient lost secret of the Pythagoreans. There's nobody else that's written any article out there about this fact, that life is the antenna of perfect incommensurability for the manifestation, water is, for the manifestation of life. And the Pythagoreans were quite literal. Who knows who gave them that information? Who knows who gave it to them before then? We can't speculate about that to any effect that is beneficial to anybody. To the effect most perfectly, for whenever of three numbers, the middle one between, and any of two that are either solids or cubes or squares, let me actually fast forward. You could actually read this passage, Timaeus 31b to 32c. Accordingly, the divine set water and air between fire and earth made them, so far as was possible, proportional to one another. So that the fire is to the air, so is the air to the water, and so is the so is the air to the water, and so is the water to the earth, and thus he bound them together, the frame, i.e. the demiurge, of a world visible and tangible. For these reasons, and from such constituents, 4 in number, the body of the universe was brought into being, coming into concord by means of proportionality. And from these it acquired amity, so that coming unto unity with itself, became hello, should have drank a little water before doing this video, indissoluble by any other save him, which has been bound together. Multiplicity, veracity. Chaldean oracles. This is Chaldean oracles set down by Julianus. This is the Heptangle Books of Gillette, New York, 1939. The monad is enlarged, which generates 2 for the dyad, sits by him and glitters with intellectual sections, and to govern all things, and to order things not ordered. For the whole world shineth the triad, over which the monad rules. This order is the beginning of all section, for the mind of the Father said that all things be cut into 3, governing all things by mind, and there appeared in it the triad, virtue and wisdom, and multicient verity. This way floweth the shape of the triad, being pre-extant. In other words, before it's actually manifest, it is already complete before being manifest. And the same is true of spirit and matter and the union there too, of which was required the logos and the third thing which makes these things possible, as in the case of Timaeus, where 2 things alone cannot be satisfied, unified, without a third. First essence measured. The matrix containing all things, thence abundantly springs from forth the generation of multivarious matter, thence extracted a prester, the flowering, glowing of life, flashing into the cavities of the world. For all things from thence beginning to extend downwards, their admirable beams, as in beams of light. I wanted to point out the crystal radio analogy because it also, too, by the way, I forgot to show it to you. Well, I did actually early on. It actually contains that same geometry between the sulfur and the lead, the lead sulfide molecule, that is able to tune these frequencies. It's literally the magic interlocutor whereby which one is able to tune these frequencies and actually listen to. Did I mention it didn't require a battery at all? Able to tune these frequencies. And of course the broadcast and the earpiece that you would actually wear. You have to have a special earpiece with a crystal radio. It's simple, but they're complicated and they're all handmade and therefore expensive. You're able to tune these frequencies. It's the third thing between the radio itself, which would be the body, the signal, of course, which is the soul. And in the case of the radio, we don't need water. In the case of the radio, we're talking about the magic galena crystal. However, the galena crystal contains within itself the exact same incommensurable geometry. This interlocutor, this third thing, the genetics or the DNA that's able to give like either 2 identical twins or 2 totally separate genetic individuals is the tuning of that, the specific tuning of, I'm trying to make a perfect analogy, the galena crystal synonymous with the DNA, i.e. the body. It would be ultimately part of the body, I mean, is reducible to dust. However, within the DNA, i.e. the galena analogy, we still have water. So water is the antenna, the signal, of course, is the soul, the life is the broadcast, but we actually have the ability to control this and change our own destiny. Now, if we have genetic defects in our DNA, whatnot, you know, we can't wish ourselves into like living 200 years. I'm sure some people think that's the case. There is a limit to it, but we can actually change our own destiny as so far as whether we live, in the dark, this glass half empty person versus this glass half full, or even seeing the glass entirely full. And it's amazing. Something actually amazing happened to me yesterday. And if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. I called up my friend who lives in North Carolina. Her name is Celeste. She'll comment on this video. I'm sure she's going to watch. It's like, remember when I was talking to you about an hour ago? And I was thinking about it as I was taking a shower, which, by the way, I'm immersed in water and taking a shower. All right, as soon as I get out of the shower, this thing I was, manifesting, it actually happened. Not only that, to a T. If I told you, there is no way you would believe me. You just say, you're just making that up. I know you would. It sounds too unbelievable, but it did happen. Not only that, I screen grabbed it, what happened, and I sent it to my friend Celeste. Remember when I told you what happened like an hour ago? I was in a shower. As soon as I get out, it happened. But it's amazing how simple things are. The ancient missing secret of the Pythagoreans of incommensurability, the logos and the harmony and this crystal that we have control. And there's the crystal and the crystal radio, right, which is the DNA. But we also, too, have this slider over here. It should actually have a little stick sticking out of the coil, which you can actually pull in or out in the case of a crystal radio, and tune it. We have the ability. Most people think, it was like, well, there's the coil over here, and whatever the frequency is the frequency is. No. With self-empowerment, and I hate saying words like that because it sounds so new agey and, self-help, nonsense. You can make, the self-help garbage. There is a little stick that's a tuning device. It's not shown in this diagram. You're able to pull in or out and change the frequency. So you can still have the same crystal. You can be listening to like garbage radio, like NPR, and take the little stick, which is the tuner, and I'm going to change to like some hip-hop music or whatever. Classical music's my favorite, and change that. But most people don't identify that we have that tuning rod on our consciousness, just as there's a tuning stick on a crystal radio that we're actually able to change the frequency. Now, the galena crystal is the galena crystal, but the galena crystal is a broad spectrum receiver. So we can actually change that. The crystal, the radio analogy, and especially the crystal radio analogy, is more perfect than can be imagined. You can't take it too far and talk about the signal and the broadcast station. That's taking things a little too far. But all the rest of it fits perfectly. And so does the grounding, by the way. Crystal radios are okay until you ground them. And everybody keeps asking me lately about grounding. It's right down here on the bottom. Grounding. I ground all the time, especially when I'm out at the farm. I know I get my feet muddy and dirty, but I don't care. I love walking around barefoot and grounding myself, and that's actually incredibly useful. So this is actually one of the ancient secrets of the Pythagoreans. It really should have taken longer to talk about this. It does, but I wanted to keep things concise and simple. Otherwise, people start rolling their eyes in the back of their heads like, oh God, it took you 20 minutes to say something that you could have said in 5 minutes. But it took every minute of this to discuss this. And anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll post that diagram on the radio on my community page, and also to the galena crystal. I'm trying to remember the ancient biblical word for sulfur. What was it again? It's right on the tip of my brain, and I can't remember it. The ancient, it's a biblical term for sulfur, molten sulfur, which is hideous. I know exactly what it is. As soon as I get done with the video, I'll remember what it is. This is what happens when you think about 10 things at once. If you ever want to contact me, my information is in the description below, also to any donation, and let me know what you think. But Pythagorean incommensurability and the logos between spirit and matter is hyperlogical and hyperrational. And that is undeniable. Thank you so much.